Recently, there has been more and more news coming about from Canon about their potential new cameras and lenses that they're going to be announced. And it's looking like 2024 is going to be a very, very big year for Canon. Nikon already splashed the news last week with their acquisition of Red Digital Cinema. And now we are hearing more and more from Canon about what is coming potentially in the next month, including some more specs about the EOS R5 Mark II, as well as a lens that many people have been long awaiting to hear from. What's going on, everybody? My name is James Jackson. If you're new here, I do tips, tricks, news, and reviews for the film and video making industry. So if this is content that you like, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you can stay up to date on all the content going forth. So a little while back, I made a video about the potential cinema cameras that are going to be coming out. Now, also keep in mind that news, as well as the news that I am going to be talking about today, is all still very much rumored. Nothing about this has been confirmed by Canon or anybody. And I always have to make that preference because people sort of just run away thinking this is what we're going to get. And once we get to the specs, particularly of the R5, we're going to see that a lot of times rumors are not meant to be true and you end up being disappointed. Instead, I'm here to, hopefully give you guys some news and some insight to that, but also sort of where do I see it from a filmmaker and a video content creator, where do these potential products from Canon are going to be sit, and this is something that you should keep an eye on. As I was saying before, Canon was rumored to potentially announcing two cinema cameras, which are the successors of the C300 and the C500 line from their EF cinema cameras. Now, we haven't really heard anything except for the fact that it is rumored that they are going to be announced these at NAB. Well, now we're also hearing that there's going to be announcements of both the R5 Mark II and the R1 is going to be around that same time, which is next month in April. We are also now hearing that they're going to be potentially announcing a 35mm 1.4, which is the L glass that many people have been eagerly and waiting to see come from Canon. Well, it looks like all of these products are finally going to be coming out in the next month. And typically with NAB, Canon typically announces a lot of stuff before the date of the show, which I believe it's like near the latter half of April. So my guess is either probably early mid to early April, we're going to hear pretty much all of these products be announced in one fell swoop. So we'll keep an eye on it, and if you subscribe to the channel, we'll definitely update you guys when we get the information as soon as possible. So let's start off with the EOS R5 II. So again, this is supposed to be rumored to be announced at the same time as the EOS R1, whereas the EOS R1 may not be shipping until the later half. And maybe the R5 maybe succeeded that. I don't necessarily know. Again, these are all rumors. We don't know. But what we do know is that right now, the latest specifications of these rumors is that it's going to be a BSI sensor, there's going to be a new processor, it's going to have the same amount of megapixels as the original R5, which is 45 megapixels. One of the things that is touted is that it's going to have 8K 60 frames a second, up from the 8K 30 frames a second. And also the rumor is that there's potentially C-Log 2 in the new Canon EOS R5 Mark II. So I know when the rumors started spreading about the R5, it was going to be a 60 megapixel. It's going to be backside illuminated. It's going to have super fast readout speeds. Again, this is why I say these are all rumors, and you should always be very cautious when you are talking about rumors. And I know, and when these sort of came out, it's like this was the specification everybody was talking about, that really a lot of the hype is stuff that is not necessarily clear, like potential advanced AI tools regarding the autofocus, and then potentially the BSI, but also the dual memory card slot, which I do think is a big deal for both stills and video, because that now gives us a clear path to where we can actually use the whole, potentially the whole recording options, what if you're doing photos or a video, and you can basically be able to get true redundancy. Whereas with the previous one, even with the R5C, you basically were stuck with a second card slot being at a lower quality versus the highest top tier that you could possibly get. Again, rumored, we don't know, but the cards that are out right now, especially CF Express Type B, they're fast enough to do it. Obviously, heat, when you're talking about this amount of data, this amount of processing happening inside tiny little bodies, there is a concern about heating. I am positive that Canon is want to not deal with overheat fiasco or overheat gate like they did with the original R5, even though I personally felt overheating and heat management was blown way out of proportions, and I've talked about that for years on this channel about it. A lot of people, funny enough, talked about it with Canon, but there were so many cameras that have came out even after the R5 from Sony where there was serious heat management problems, but they never get talked about. Just saying. So with basically just, the same amount of megapixels, no megapixel bump, potentially a bump in frame rates per second, and potentially a bump in readout speed, which will obviously mean reduced rolling shutter. But keep in mind, we're still talking about 8K worth of footage in a small body. That's a huge lot of a lot of that's going to be weighed on what this new processor, supposedly at least, new processor is going to be. And right now, we just don't know if this processor is going to work, but we shall see. But if the rumor specifications are true, I would say this is a pretty decent update. Again, this still kind of feels like it's what the R5C should have been instead of what we typically got. I just hope we actually get a full-size HDMI this time. Who knows? Here's hoping, fingers crossed, because I didn't see anything about a full-size HDMI. Which also kind of like, what's the situation with the R5C? Again, what was the point? Was it feels, this sort of to me makes, at least in terms of the R5C, it kind of makes it feel like that was sort of just a camera created to mitigate the backlash they got with the overheating of the R5, instead of essentially trying to build what they should have done with this. But let's be clear, 45 megapixels is still a great amount of resolution, more resolution than most people are going to be using for the type of work they are going to be doing. So I don't think the resolution is a big deal. I know some people wanted a big bump and oversampling, but honestly, if you understand how much power something like this can make, especially if we're going to be if people want to shoot full frame 8K, it's best that they just use just enough amount of resolution, which they have by going with a 45 megapixels, just enough to do DCI 8K. The real intriguing thing is potentially that there may be C-Log 2, which would explain to me that the sensor is better in terms of dynamic range, because they can entrust it enough in terms of its latitude performance that it can handle the aggressive noise floor that C-Log 2 typically brings. For me, at least, as a filmmaker and a cinematographer, I already know autofocus is going to be great. Canon's autofocus has always been great. Even if it's not #1, it's damn near close to #1 a lot of times. And I've been pretty solid with the IBIS, especially with the telephone lens. The wide, I wish there's still some problems with the wobble effects on the wider end, but the IBIS I feel has been pretty solid, at least from my experience with the original R5. My whole big thing is that I know a lot of people want the faster readout speed, so here's hoping there's that. But for me, it's more about the operating system that you would get on the R5C, which I'm almost certain we're not going to get in this camera, because this is pretty much designed to be a hybrid camera, which the R5C was also designed. They call it the hybrid camera. That was kind of the point of that as well. So it feels like, again, they're creating the same exact camera that it is, except they're now most likely going to take away false color, shutter angle, and a lot of the exposure tools that we got in the R5C, because the operating system was designed for that. Now, here's hoping that we can still get false color, and I'm really hopeful that we will, because we have seen false color in cameras like the R6 and some of the lower ends. So it only makes sense that at least we get false color if we don't get waveforms in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. Now, is it the fact that they need a global shutter sensor? No, honestly, right now, I feel like the whole talk of global shutter from a video standpoint is, for the most part, overrated. It's just like IBIS. For me, IBIS is overrated. A lot of features that we're touting is kind of overrated to push us to buy these more higher end and pay more premiums on it. But I personally just believe, as of right now, global shutter is kind of a luxury feature, but not a necessary feature, which the YouTube world sort of kind of makes you sort of believe that it is. It's not. It's a luxury, but it's not a need. Unless you are doing very specific tasks where it requires you to do a lot of movement, then sure. But Canon has already provided that. You have the Canon C70, which has a really solid fast readout speed. You have cameras like the Canon EOS R3. So these cameras have already been out for a while. It's just the fact that now everybody expects every camera to have the latest and greatest feature, but that's not how business works. They're going to make decisions and cut things. So right now, the R5 Mark II, while very intrigued and really interested to see, I think it will be, once again, another great tool that you could potentially use for film and video, especially if you are in the RF ecosystem, where there's so many great lenses available to you and more to come, even from the higher end like Cooke and Carl Zeiss. I personally just feel like we're kind of getting the same camera, and I'm sort of more of a wait and see to really see if it piques my interest. As of right now, it hasn't. And quite frankly, there hasn't been any hybrid camera that interests me because I don't do photos. So my interest at this point in time has mainly been through truly dedicated video cameras, and I'm still keeping my eye out at that. But I do know that this camera is probably going to peak and tick a lot of boxes that a lot of people are going to be looking for their next hybrid camera. But to me, it's a way to see, but the next 4 weeks are going to be really exciting times in my personal opinion. But these are my thoughts. I would love to know what you guys think. Let me know, leave your comments down below. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, take care, everyone.